AI is going to either replace us or revolutionize what we can create, right? And this is depending on who you talk to and who you ask. And the reality is that this is not neither apocalypse nor utopia. And basically, AI is changing how we work in both subtle and profound ways. And so I'm just going to share a few ways that I've used AI in my work recently and to do, just better research, design, and writing decisions faster. And I'm looking to also hear from you at the end, what other ways, surprising ways you've used AI to do your own work better for everyone in the UX department. So if you don't know me very quickly, I'm Pedro and I'm a principal product designer and a pajamas design system maintainer. And I've been working at GitLab in various areas over the years. And I'm based in sunny Lisbon, Portugal. Today it's cloudy, so I should amend that, but usually it's sunny and it's good. And so many tools, even more uses. What we can do with AI in the UX work is, almost limitless. There are new tools coming up every day. And today I'm just going to focus on three of the tools that everyone here has access to either for free or as part of our tool set that we can access through Okta. So that is Claude, Perplexity, and Dovetail. So Claude, the way I see it here, and I'm going to explain this a little bit more, is that it's not really, unfortunately, it does not have access like ChatGPT to the web. So you cannot really verify what it outputs if you're looking for facts, right? So this is why here I categorize it as creation, because everything that it comes up with, it can be creative, right? Perplexity, on the other hand, is a tool that is geared towards research and search of the web, and it actually uses those resources in real time, like Google, but using AI. But still, I'm going to, talk a little bit more about that in a second of why even that with Perplexity can be a little bit creative. And finally, Dovetail, it's our UX research repository tool and where we, look at transcripts from video calls, and it has a lot of interesting AI features that they've introduced. So the first thing I'm going to share is actually something that I started doing when I did the DMBA course last year, which is to research competitors. And so I've used Perplexity mainly to collect the data about what for our competitors, what are at least the business, the product, customers' data, and extracting that from verifiable sources. And this saves me a lot of time, as you might imagine. I don't have to go look exclusively like at the company websites, databases, podcasts, news, interviews. It looks at all of that, including, company reports and industry reports. Um, but as I mentioned here in this slide at the bottom, triple check AI outputs, because even in Perplexity, there was this instance that it came up with, a data point and it was missing a reference. And I looked around and I was trying to find it. Where is this coming from? And I asked it directly, what is the source for that data point? And it was honest, and it told you, no, that was made up. I apologize. There's actually no source for that. So even with Perplexity, we know these things are getting better by the day, but we need to verify them. And so what I started doing then was with that data that I collected with Perplexity, maybe putting it on a spreadsheet or another, canvas, and then I started looking for patterns. And so that's the moment that I can then feed it into Claude, for example, or ChatGPT or another generative AI tool to help me group competitors, identify themes in the research. What is like the direct competition, who is the indirect, what is the potential competition, and also helping me shape insights about what is valuable to learn about the competition. What are things that we can take action on that are surprising and relevant to our work? And at the end of the day, it gets us only so far, right? And so for me, when I was doing that work, I had to take it with a grain of salt because it is missing a lot of nuances, but it's a good start. It takes you already into a good place, and it can, at the very least, break the ice and that moment where you don't feel like doing a specific thing. And so this is what perplexity looks like. This is an example of a search that I did, and it comes up with a lot of different sources to back up all of the things that you ask it. Even images that correlate with what you're asking. So it's very helpful. Then Dovetail, a couple of the things that I've used it to do is, discover insights from previous research very, very quickly, much faster than I would have in the past, looking at our GitLab, UX research project, UX research insights project, and all of those sources. This is much, much faster. Of course, transcribing recordings is something that it already did. But it now also helps you auto tag and highlight, which is something really interesting that I'm going to show in a bit. So this is the ability to look at past insights. So this is something that I did when I started working on Dual Workflow, was to see what, from all of the research we've done in Dovetail, what were the themes that highlighted that we needed task automation, that we needed to streamline specific workflows. And so I entered, different queries, got these beautiful summaries. And as you can see here, it summarized, in this case, 41 notes across 19 projects. And it took it, I don't know, 30 seconds. And at the very least, this is a great, great starting point for me. And eventually, I translated these into an issue that I shared with my product manager that even has the links, as you can see there in that note, that links to the sources in Dovetail for all of those, those insights. So this was very valuable because it was extracting the knowledge that we have in the light of what I want to achieve. What is the research question that I have in mind? Then the other thing was the highlighting. This was interesting because what you can do is when you create tags in Dovetail, you can actually describe them. You can add a description under the name of the tag. And if you describe them quite well, it already has some templates. But if you want to add your own tags with a description, when you then transcribe videos or enter data and ask it to auto highlight and tag, it is going to take the descriptions of your tags. For example, if you add something like that is a positive highlight, like a praise, and you describe what kind of data it would fit into that tag, or efficiency, and then you describe, oh, this is where we want to note if there are points where people struggled with doing something and they felt less efficient, it is going to take that and auto tag all of your research. And this was very helpful to speed up things for me. But then again, I double checked it. There were things that I did agree on, things that I did not agree, but it was very helpful. And then finally, I think more than Dovetail is going back to Claude to explore not only the qualitative data, but also the quantitative. And this is what I did with the last UX bashes that I was involved, was just like this final pass where I took all of it and shoved it into Claude. And for me, it was easier because it, compared to Dovetail, allowed me to, diverge and converge and, interact in natural language and ask it questions. And I was able to extract what I wanted to put it into the research insights. Where in Dovetail, it is very much pushing you towards the direction of you have to create insights, right? It's very about creating the final thing. Whereas in Claude, it's more of a thinking partner as a like a work in progress, canvas that you can explore your data in your research. And you can, as I said, add all of your knowledge there. So this is what I did. This is the actual project that I created in Claude. And on the top right corner, I added, project knowledge with all of the information that I had, even the Excel files from surveys with all of the data. And then I started asking it questions. And what was interesting is when in that top right corner below where you see the project knowledge, you can add some project instructions. And so what I tried to do was actually add instructions based on the research brief those, if you've gone through this, those empty, placeholder sections that we all need to fill in our research issues, you can actually, and this is what I did, copy and paste much of those into the project instructions. And this gave the context of what were the hypotheses, the research questions, the goals, the decisions that this research was going to inform. And this was great context for Claude to help me answer the research questions. And I'm not going to go, too much in detail on them, but these were some of the examples that I tried out in Claude and got a lot of valuable feedback. This one in particular was interesting because I had a table and I just wanted it to analyze, the statements that people agreed or disagreed with and try to see if they were more positive and negative. So I just copy and pasted a screenshot of that and it did a wonderful job. And then here are a couple of other, prompts and questions that I had for it. And it did a wonderful job, especially the ones at the bottom where I was asking it to provide evidence with user quotes, like specifically like for this and that problem. It did a great job. Much easier to do this in Claude than compared to Dovetail. Then I think the most common one is generating and refining UI text. And for me, it was incredible that I was designing an AI feature and I was generating placeholder content with AI. So these are some examples of where I was. Also, all of the UI text that you see here was generated with Claude, or most of it. And it's actually very realistic. So the message you see here, the pipeline is failing because the follow-ups below it, how to check where the issue is, how to prevent similar time-muted mistakes. All of this was generated using Claude, giving the context of what I wanted to achieve. Even this plan that is part of one of the UI designs that I put together, was all generated with Claude. And finally, the one that surprised me the most was, but I was just like, okay, I'm just going to try it and see if it does anything, remotely valuable, was to ask it, oh, I actually need to generate plausible terminal output for for running a test suite. Can you generate that for me? And it did, which was really incredible. And I used this in my designs. And yes, these are some of the prompts that I put together. Um, yeah, the one that I was very surprised was initially, as you can see here, I asked it to generate a detailed plan of how I could fix a failing unit test. And it was very accurate. I thought that this could actually work. And as you can see here, when I was showing it in this slide, this was exactly the plan that I used in the UI designs. And then I asked it to generate an alternative plan. And it also did generate an amazing alternative plan. And in that number 3 that you can see here on this slide, I asked it also to create a one-line explanation of each of the 2 plans so that I can easily communicate that to the user. And that is what you see here at the top where it says option 1, straightforward, and option 2, comprehensive. Those are exactly the UI text that Claude generated for me, which was really cool. And then finally, yeah, how to generate and format a log that I wanted to use as a terminal. So this sped up, my UI design a lot and made it very realistic to the point that I had many people coming up to me to ask if it was a real thing. It was actually a prototype that I did in Figma, but the content was so real that, and in context, and everything made sense together, right? That they felt like it was the real product working. And also was, very much used to show to customers and so on. And one of the other things was using our pajamas content and guidelines and also our documentation to help me write better UI text. So I created a project just for this, which I took inspiration from Marcin. I think he had created one for technical writing back in the beginning when we had the Claude pilot. And I created one now for me, which has all of this knowledge that I just copy and pasted from all of these pages that we have documentation. and I'm using it to improve my UI text and any documentation that I write, and it has been very helpful. And one of the things that I tried out recently was actually to improve the project instructions itself. So I asked Claude, these are the project instructions that I have. Can you improve them? And it actually helped me improve the project instructions so that even that base instructions are much better for the purposes that I need. Um, and finally, this was the one that blew my mind the most. I think is the most surprising is how do I can brainstorm design decisions with Claude. So to explore not only different solutions with, rationale, but to discuss them, get feedback on my ideas, and even generate prototypes and see the ideas come to life. And for me, the reason I prefer this to, Figma plugins or other design tools is because you know, Claude doesn't just output the prototype or the wireframes or the high fidelity UI designs. It actually shares the rationale of what it is presenting. And you can even follow up to critique the design and understand the pros and cons. And for me, the prototypes that it creates are like ephemeral artifacts, and they don't like close me too much on what I want to do. So I'm just gonna quickly see if I can demo this for you. Um, so this was a conversation. I hope you're all seeing, the Claude's chat now. Yeah, hope so. Um, so at a certain point, I came up with this question for Claude. So I said, I'm designing how the UI could look like in the IDE for this new duo workflow feature. I give it some context, and I said, right now I'm torn between these two different approaches. One approach here and another approach here. What do you think? Under any other pros and cons in each approach? How could the cons be mitigated? What other approaches could I design for? And it analyzed and the pros and cons, and there's a lot of interesting things here, but then it came up with alternative approaches, alternative approach 1, alternative approach 2, 3, and 4. So these would be different ways of solving the same problem, and it started proposing concepts. And so yeah, the first concept was a little bit, it was interesting, right? And it worked really quite well to show what the concept was. Then I started asking it, okay, so now mock up a concept of that other approach. And so it started mocking up concepts for each of the approaches that it had. And these, the UI design is not great, but these different approaches to the same problem, the layout, how you could flow the user, like this one is only in the chat, how you could, show all of this information. There's another one here, which is the wizard, instead of like being tabs or whatever, it's a wizard, and you proceed, next, next. Yeah. And to me, this blew my mind of what it could do. And it was very helpful. And I started integrating it also in Figma. And I've since then I've created another project to do designs, the project instructions. It's a world-class designer that provides feedback on whatever I placed into. And I also added about our UX heuristics, and it has been very helpful as a very quick way to get feedback on what I'm working on. And
Thanks a lot,
finally,
Pedro.
and
I'm sorry to
yeah,
cut you off, but we do have Becca up next here, so we need to
okay, I'm
pass
wrapping
the
up.
torch
Yeah,
over to her. Any
okay.
final comments before we stop?
No, no, I just wanted to share that I had these questions in the agenda in case anyone wants to add things there about what US cases you are most likely to try tomorrow and how you've used AI in your work in some ways that surprise you.
Thanks. Let's continue the conversation inside of the agenda.